This is the column that we use. There's kind of two sets of columns. There's 10 trays in this one and 10 trays in that. Everyone can take your time later and look. You'll see the trays. There's a bunch of thermocouples sticking in, and they're labeled. What you'll see on the LabVIEW interface software that we use. I think this is called 3, 4, 5, and then this is the feed, and then there's a couple at the top, and then there's one here for the reboiler. So this is the sump. First of all, this is a batch distillation. This is not a continuous distillation. It's a batch. We only feed stuff in to fill up the sump. Then we stop feeding. It's not like a continuous feed, right? We just fill it, and then we're done with feed. So you know that this is called like the feed stage thermocouple. It's not like you have a continuous feed. You just fill it. That means it's only batch. That means there's no stripping section. It's just rectification. It's just up. There's no down, right? And there's no continuous bottoms. We measure the composition of the. We can call it the bottoms, but it's the sump material. But if you open the valve at the bottom, it's just going to flow out because it's just like the gravity of the weight of fluid. It's not like it's not like you have a feed and things going, and, so it's not a continuous process. Okay, so where do we start? You're gonna start with a tank back there, and it's gonna give you the composition of whatever basically we recovered from the previous brew. It's going to be something less than 30 weight % methanol, and you're going to adjust the concentration with methanol to get it to 30 weight %. Okay, that's what you want to get it to. So when you get that to 30 weight %, then you're going to pour it into the feed reservoir, which is here. You can either physically pour, we have a ladder there you can use, or you can siphon it. We have a little pump there that you just put it up here and siphon it in. So you fill that up. Make sure you get at least like about 11 or 12 liters because you need to fill this up to 10 liters. That's what this line is here. This is marked off 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 7. So yeah, it's up to 10. So this is just the feed reservoir. There's a valve here. You need to have that open when you want to feed it. And then there's just a pump. It's not good to run it dry, so keep it off. But you just turn it on and feed it. And then when you're done, you want to make sure you close that valve because otherwise there's an opening that can go backwards. So you want to have that closed. Otherwise, the vapors come up, they can go in. So once that's fed, it's fed. And then this will be gone. I've been doing a little bit of work up there. Okay, so once it's fed, and then what was I going to say? So many things to say. Yeah, there is a little heat exchanger down here. This is little single shell and tube heat exchanger to sample things from the bottom. The sample, just the stuff comes out here with this valve. Now, when you first feed it, it's still cold, so you don't really need to worry about cooling it. But you're going to want to take a sample when it's all loaded, so you know when you're really starting with. Because you're going to estimate your mixture that you make, try to make it 30. You're going to put it in here. There's always a little bit of residual stuff in here. You can see it floating around because it's just you can't get down the hole. So you take a sample at the beginning, so we know for real what you start with. Give it to me. Your samples are always just going to be, at least for GC, they're just going to be these little vials. You only need about 1 mil. Most of these, I don't know why this one's not marked. These vials are marked half, 1, 1.5. You really only need like 1 mil. So typically, if you take a sample down there, you just need, I would just get a little 10 mil beaker. You can get a bigger one, but you just need such a little amount. You just hold it there, and then 1 little mil. And then make sure when you're done, you cap it right away. so it doesn't, so no evaporation happens. Okay, just finger tighten. And you want to write your sample names on here, just directly on the glass with a Sharpie. Don't put tape on these because then it won't fit in the sample, auto sample for the GC. So you only need tiny amounts, about 1 mil, 1.5 mils. And you can use these little pipettes, or you can use one of these micro pipettes, either way. And I'll give you a sample tray to put all your samples in. Okay, but when this does get hot, once we turn on the steam and get things heating up, and whenever you want to take subsequent samples, there's two things to note here. One is that the volume in this chamber is about 25 mils, 30, I think it's 25 or 30 mils, I can't remember. So then it's good to have maybe like a little 50 milliliter beaker so that you can purge out whatever in there. Because you want to load this with whatever's in here, not what's just sitting in there. So you want to get rid of that stuff. So now you're going to want to get your gloves when things are hot. We have thermal gloves. Just, then open up this to bleed out basically about 30 mils, and then close it. And then that 30 mils you can put, once you've loaded this, and you have that feed, can thing, feed container, then you can just keep on dumping stuff back in there, because that's just, we're going to use that over and over again. So we try not to let too much stuff go down the drain. You can recycle everything. So when you take your little samples or purge, throw it back in there. Or you can just get a big beaker and collect everything into a big giant beaker, and at the end, dump it back. Okay. But then you turn on the chilling water. That's chill water. It goes on the tube side, and then so your sample's on the shell side here. You let it cool for about 2 minutes, and then you can take your little tiny sample, your little, 2 milliliters or 3 milliliters to put into a vial. So purge out 30 mils, close it, turn on the cooling water, let it cool, and then take your little amount. You're going to do that a couple of times. You're going to do that. Okay, you're going to get a sample before you do any heating down here. I would say then get a sample when you're all heated up and you got all the total reflux happening, because that actually tells you the composition here when there's all these equilibrium stages all the way up the column with increasing amounts of methanol going up the column. Then I would get another sample down here probably at the end of your 3 total reflux experiments. You're going to do total reflux at low, medium, and high temperature. So you reach total reflux, you're going to measure the distillate flow rates when you switch from total reflux to total distillate. So then I would take another sample when you're done with that. That represents also the beginning composition for your batch distillation, right? When you take the sample down here after your 3rd total reflux. Then you would take a sample down here again about every 15 or 20 minutes of your batch distillation. So you can do your Rayleigh analysis. You want to have time points of how this composition is changing during the batch distillation. So about every 15 or 20 minutes, for the batch distillation, you're going from whatever flow rate you have at time 0 for batch distillation, coming down. You want to keep doing it until you get to about 25% of the original flow rate. So if it takes, let's say it takes a minute to collect 50 mils, you want to keep doing that until it takes, 4 minutes to collect 50 mils, right? That would be, the flow rate has gone down, is that right? You get the point. You want to do it until 25%. And then during the intervals in which you are measuring the rate, which is again, every 15 or 20 minutes you want to measure the rate of distillation. Right? It's continuously distilling the whole time. You're collecting and collecting, collecting, collecting. You have the top tray set at a constant temperature. You have your reflux ratio set at 0.5, and you're just collecting, collecting. But then every 15 or 20 minutes, measure the rate. Take a sample. Measure the rate. And you can also, when you measure the rate, also take a sample here to see if the composition is changing. It shouldn't be because the top tray temperature is not changing, but it will change because this is batch and it's not actually So you take a sample at the beginning and in the middle a couple times, and at the end from the top and the bottom, as you're also measuring the rates. That's all the data you're going to collect, everything I just said. No need to have this cooling water on down here unless you're going to cool a sample, unless you have it on to cool. This one you will have on the whole time. This is cooling water for the condenser on the top of the column. So that thing, there's a plate exchanger up there. That's the condenser. That thing sitting on the back. It's just right there. Plate exchanger. You have stuff going in and alternating between plates and coming out, and then you have the cooling water coming in and alternating and coming out. It's a heat thing. So the reflux stuff, this is the column. You have reflux going up, that tube coming down, going through the condenser, which is being chilled by this water, and this water is then just going down the drain. You can hear it. And then so that's condensing, and then you see those two red valves. Those red valves are controlled pneumatically by these PI transducers. One valve controls the reflux back in, right? So you have the distillate coming up, condensing, reflux going back in, and the valve in the back is controlled by this red guy, is what controls the flow rate distillate. So you have a distillate valve in the back and a reflux valve in the front. And then you have a third thing controlled by pressure, and that's the steam. Okay? So, in addition to needing to have cooling water on, I'm going to turn it off because it's noisy. But that's got to be on the whole time. We need air on the whole time. Okay, this air is set to 20 psi. It feeds into all of these transducers. We only use these three: distillate, reflux, and steam. And so this 20 psi feeds into here, and then these are controlled by the lab view to set the amperage from 4 to 15 milliamps. So basically 0 to 4 milliamps is 0. It's off, or it means no signal. 4 to 15, no, 4 to 20 controls pressure from 0 to 15 psi. So 4 to 20 milliamps controls 0. So you can see, for example, this one is at 15. It's already on, opened up all the way. This is the distillate valve. The reflux valve is on, opened all the way. And the steam valve is shut, it's at 0. Okay? So those are the valves. This is the steam here. So this is a manual valve. This is especially this is hot because it's not insulated. This is not too hot because it's insulated. You can feel it's warm. But you probably don't want to touch these with your hands. They're a little hot. Manual. You should be able to touch these with your hands, but why not use a glove just to be safe? You shouldn't need to worry about this. This is the steam pressure regulator, which I can adjust manually just with a wrench. It's literally a diaphragm to control the pressure of the steam. And then when we start, we want the steam to first purge out that way. So this is open, and this is closed. And this is just a bleed to get all the condensed junk from the steam lines. It's going to be black and gooey, and just, it's just stuff is accumulating. We leave it constantly running a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of steam or condensate dripping down there, and there's steam rising. So we try to keep it flowing so we don't get too much accumulation of condensed junk, but we get it. So you gotta purge it all out there. And then once it's nice and clean, and once this is filled, we're ready to start heating it, then we can shut that off and open that. And now it's going this way to the heat exchanger. And all this is the reboiler. It's just a single shell and tube heat exchanger, single pass, right there. And so, you have all this sump fluid, which is not, there's no heat exchanger here. It's just in that one little thing right there. So you're getting, you have a slug of liquid, whatever's in here is also going to be in the tube side. and then it's going to heat up and rise, and then eventually you're going to get siphoning just because of that action, and you'll get circulation. So it's like a thermal siphon. No need to have a pump, but it takes a while, because at first you're just going to basically just heat up that stuff, and it's going to come up here, and it's going to start rising because you get hot stuff going up, and a little bit down there, and eventually this sump will heat up quickly. It'll take a long time, and suddenly it'll heat up. And you really can never get to steady state, total reflux, until this is all one temperature, the whole sump. And that represents the boiling point of this mixture, right? Once this whole thing is at the boiling point, and you already have reflux on all these plates, then you're at steady state, total reflux. And then you can get different steady states depending on what you set for the top tray temperature, right? And that then affects the total, or the, if you switched over from total reflux to total distillate, it'll affect the rate that stuff is shooting out the top. Okay, so a couple other important safety, one very important one is this here. Okay, so this is a pressure gauge, just telling you what's the pressure, like literally right here at the top of the sump. Here's a tube that goes through essentially this valve that shoots out the bottom. This valve is always open unless you power it up. If you leave it open, that means whenever anything wants to boil, it just shoots out the bottom, and you can't do anything. But when you turn this on, you hear that charge. Now the valve closed, and then I can manually set the pressure at which the valve is opened by the steam pressure. So it's a pressure relief valve. So it's set to about 8 psi. So if 8 psi shows up into here, it opens up that valve, and the steam will shoot out the bottom. Or I mean the vapor, not steam, the stuff in the pump. So you got to make sure this is on. If it's not on, then it's always open and you can't do anything. Okay. So you want to keep your eye on that. Make sure it's not getting too high. You should always be probably below 5 or even 4 psi. It starts climbing up.